I think it's okay. Just make sure it's on. I'm Bob. I'm an alcoholic. Sober through the grace of God in AA since the 10th of December, 1967. For that, I'm very grateful. Very special. It's a great crew of people who are putting your program on this weekend. It's been a pleasure to interact with them, and thank Jimmy and Maribeth and everybody else who had anything to do with this conference. We're pleased to be included. The love of AA. You think? The love of AA. I have tried my best to surround myself with people that love our fellowship, and it'd be so difficult to explain how many people, that I stand on the shoulders of, the people that, the last 55 years that I've had the privilege of watching them and the influence that they've had on Linda and our lives. Those early couples and, the reception I got at my meetings I'm going to get into my talk real beyond that. It's a very special place, and we're so lucky to be in this room with the focus that we have. The world is so mixed up today, and people are hard on each other. But when you walk in these rooms, it doesn't feel like that. And Mike and Diane talked about not bringing outside issues into our program, and I'm so glad that we don't. And I'm so glad that we have it to bring into. As I said, I'm Bob. I'm an alcoholic, and I started drinking when I was a teenager, 13 years old, 14 years old. I went to a military high school and a college campus, and it was a pretty serious military school. In the Second World War, they made officers of the high school people graduating when they did that, so as I say, it was a pretty serious deal. We drank in high school like most people drink in college. We had fraternities. Of my 6 closest friends in high school, 4 of us are members of Alcoholics Anonymous, 2 of our wives. We've all been married over 50 years, and we all have over 45 years of sobriety. That's an odd statistic. I mean, when you think of, how those people came together. I love drinking. When I entered high school, I was 4'11", 95 pounds. I was the second smallest kid in the class, mostly mouth. I was a pretty good student, but when I found alcohol, my life changed, and I started drinking as often as I could. We found places that would serve people that had a tie on, and we stole our parents' booze, and by the time I finished high school, my drinking problem was a large subject of conversation in our home. I'm one of 7 kids. Loved my mother and father. My father was one of the most fantastic men I ever had the privilege of being with, as was my mother. I had a chance to go away to school to get away from some of the supervision that I was under, and I thought my drinking would become normal. It didn't. I drank my way out of the University of Notre Dame in the middle of my senior year, in the yearbook with my class ring. I remember when I went to tell the priest I was leaving, he said, "God, you're a senior, for Christ's sake. Do not, just go to class tomorrow." I did not know where my classes were. I gave a talk down at South Bend or Mishawaka about 5 months ago. One of my sponsees lined up a talk, and we got a chance, Linda and I, to go around the campus of Notre Dame. And a priest took us around in a golf cart for 3 or 4 hours. It's changed so much. I've been down there a couple of times, but I haven't been down there in 25 years. And I was trying to get in touch with who that 17-year-old kid was, or 18-year-old kid that took a left-hand turn. I mean, I was a good student. I was in civil engineering, carrying 25 credits a semester, and somewhere in my sophomore year, I took a left-hand turn and became a semi-full-time drunk. I'm the class drunk. I mean, they used my room as a study hall. I supported myself with gambling. I was a pretty good pool player and a pretty good poker player. And the Army, I was in ROTC, and they gave me $80 a month, and that supplied me pretty good. When I walked out of Notre Dame, I was due to be commissioned. I had to get a medical release. and medical release I got was for alcoholism. I was diagnosed an alcoholic when I was 18 years old. I thought that was a bunch of hooey. But it got me out of going to Vietnam when I walked out of Notre Dame. I came back at St. Thomas University. I finished school at a local university. When I finished school, my dad asked me to leave home. He said, "What?" He said, "We love you, but we don't know what to do with you." And I got a job at a liquor store, and it's important to use your gifts. And I was delivering liquor one morning, and I backed out of the driveway, and I knocked a little girl off her bicycle under the truck. She was not hurt. She was not touched by anything other than the sidewalk. Crying, I picked her up. She pointed down the alley. I go down the alley. I'm carrying this girl, and I'm standing in front of the house I was born in, holding a girl with half a bag on at 10 o'clock in the morning. And the neighbors started to come out. And I thought, how'd you get here? How'd you get here? And I left that job, took a waiter's job downtown Minneapolis. I'm drinking somewhere between a pint and a fifth a day. I drink a couple of beers in the morning. I go to work. I leave work at 2 o'clock. I go to a bar and I drink from 2 to 5. And at 5, I go back for the second shift. And I got a pint bottle on my uniform, or a half pint. I was the world's worst waiter. God. I got my face kicked in one night at a party. I got fired. I had no place to go. And I went back and asked the family if they'd take me back. And they did. They asked me not to drink. I, of course, promised not to drink. No, I'm drinking 3/4 of a fifth a day, daily. And I'm thinking I'm just going to quit. And I started to come apart at the seams. And of course, I wasn't able to quit drinking. So I got back together. I was at a party, really loaded. Linda and I had been going together for about a year. We broke up for 6 or 9 months. We're not sure anymore how long it was. And I went to a party. She had a date, and I was really bad shape. And I asked her if she'd meet me the next day, and she said she would. And she did. And I asked her if she'd consider getting back together and seriously consider marriage. And she said yes, hesitantly. Now, she was a psychiatric nurse working in an alcohol ward. So while she's pretty attractive, she's one sandwich short of a picnic, I think. How that happened. So I get accepted into officer candidate school. I'm getting ready to go, maybe go to Vietnam. The war's on, and I'm probably going to get drafted. They lose my file. They asked me to come back and take the physical for the 4th time. I go back and take the physical, and they failed me for a hearing problem. I don't have to go to Vietnam. Now I'm together with Linda. I get engaged, I get married. I get a job as an executive trainee in a manufacturing concern. I buy my first car. I think, hey, I'm going to be a grown-up. Only I can't quit drinking. Just before my senior year at Notre Dame, I was beaten up, robbed, rolled, pistol whipped, shot at, and thrown out of the 2nd story of a hotel, and ended up in an emergency room and then in a psych ward of a hospital in St. Paul. And they were not going to let me go back to school. I talked my way out of that, I'm not sure how, and I went back and I was sober for about 3 months. And I proved 2 things. There's one, everybody has been telling me since I've been a kid that I had a drinking problem. I just quit for 2 or 3 months. I could quit. Number 2, I'm still a dink. I'm still not doing what I'm supposed to be doing and all of that. And so I thought if I really was serious and getting married and getting a career job, I can't quit drinking. I'm now the company drunk. I'm sleeping my hangovers off in the dark room of a large corporation because the photographer's a buddy. Falling asleep at my desk, using up my sick leave in the first 2 months of work. When I went back to make amends to the guy who hired me, he said, "God, you interviewed so well." I said, "Yeah, we do. We have performance issues." I quit that job. I got a sales job. I had the sales job for a couple of months. I go out on a 4-day drunk, and I wake up Thursday, July 1967, hugging the toilet in a suit that I've been in for 3 days, and that was my moment. It had been recommended to me that I go to AA or I go into treatment, really. And I called the National Council on Alcoholism. They referred me to intergroup. I talked to the old-timer dinner group, and he sent 2 guys out at a restaurant about 1 mile away from our house, 2 miles away from our house. And as soon as I hung up the phone, I thought, God, that's an overreaction. You're 23 years old, for God's sakes. You are not, what are you doing? But I wanted to go see what an alcoholic looked like. And I went and met these 2 guys. One guy has 6 years, one guy has 6 months. They sat me down in a booth and told me, they said, we're from AA, we had a drinking problem, found an answer for it, hope it helps you. If it doesn't help you, don't worry about it, it helps us talking to you. And they told me their story. We have many traditions in AA, but maybe the best of which is that we share our experience, strength, and hope, not our philosophy, not our, I could have not wanted what those men recommended, but they were giving me the real thing. We are the best BS detectors because we're all liars. And they told me their stories, and they changed my life. I went to the meeting that night, met my sponsor, actually my first 2 sponsors, same meeting. And I drank twice after walking on AA, once after a month on a business trip, and once after 3 months on our honeymoon. And I think I had that subconsciously planned. We honeymooned in Mexico, and I drank in Mexico, dove off those cliffs, where the divers dive off, dove off those cliffs in Mexico. Had my last drink on the airplane on the way home. Turned myself into my sponsor. My sponsor was my sponsor got sober in 1954, and he was 13 years sober when I came in, and he was a mailman, and his wife was Linda's sponsor. And in the 43 years that he was my sponsor, never did we call and say, can we come over, that they said no. Never. With kids, without kids, fighting, not fighting. I mean, it was just extraordinary. He just had an AA house, and we were part of the family. And he sat me down in a seat about where you're sitting, John, and he said, alcoholism is a disease, physical, mental, and spiritual. Once you're across the line from problem drinking to alcoholism, your alcoholism affects you all the time, when you're drinking and when you're not drinking. Now, I'd been under psychiatric care for 2 or 3 years. The idea that my alcoholism could affect me when I was not drinking was like rocket science. I'd never heard that idea. All they've been talking to me about how I drink and the consequences of how I drink. And he's telling me that I have a disease, which I did not know. I just thought I was a horse's ass. And he's telling me that it affects me he said, what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous, once we take our last drink or drug, we use the 12 steps to change our lives in such a way that's sufficient so we don't have to go back to drugs or booze to do something for us that we're unwilling or unable to do it for ourselves. If you don't change, you will not stay. Gettysburg Address of Alcoholics Anonymous. I got him because his wife worked with my grandmother at a dairy co-op, and he turned out to be the most active member in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I got to be his wingman. And he was he was my big book. He's not a guy that you would have come to your conference and give a talk, but he was my book. I mean, he was really just an extraordinary guy, as was his wife. Now, my gift is I liked AA. I worked with an awful lot of, AA was a lot smaller in 1967, and when a new guy would come in at a different club, they'd say, hey, there's a guy over at Uptown, young guy doing pretty well, and we had a young people's meeting, but the young people that I worked with didn't stick. But for some reason, when I walked in that room full of Second World War vets and 2 women, Rose and Helen, I was home. I've been wondering what the hell's wrong with me forever. My mother always said, you're not very bright, Bob, dress well. And I did. I used to sell clothes, and I looked good. I sounded good. I was a suit. I was smart but not effective. And my life was falling. When we went down Notre Dame, 12 of us went from my high school. I had the highest test marks. I was the only one who didn't finish. Story of my life, stories of many of our life. So now I'm in AA, and I'm going to more meetings than anybody's going to it. My life was, the impact was just extraordinary. When I did my first fourth and fifth step, it was like, I'm a Catholic, and I did it kind of like a general confession, and it was like more like a third grade project that your mother put on the refrigerator. It did not get to the causes and conditions that I was dealing with. And I found myself, when I started to get in touch with my defects of character, I didn't have a very good sense. I'm 23 or 24 years old. I don't have a very good sense of what's going on. But one by one, my defects of character got handed me over the next couple of years. The biggest issue is that I couldn't get up in the morning. Later found out that had something to do with when I went to bed. I'm a money spender. I spend, in those days, $200 or $300 more a month than I made. I mean, our salaries were $550 a month in 1967. Linda was a registered nurse. I think she was closer to 600. If you spend more money than you make, you end up in debt. I just want to report that to you in case you're running that one. When I came in, I owed a year's salary when I came in. The Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a gambling problem. It was really more of a hobby. 4 or 5 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. But I'm making $4 to $5 grand a year playing backgammon. It was like a second job. I'm making as much money playing backgammon as I'm making on my job. My wife is a registered nurse. She's getting up at 6. I get up at 9. I'm an unhelpful husband. All I want to do is AA. And we start to have children, and I look back on that, and I think, my God, how irresponsible I was. And I had some issues with where I had a little difficulty getting to work, and I had some trouble staying at work, and I had some trouble working at work. Other than that, I was a pretty good worker. These were not monthly problems or annual problems. These were daily problems. None of these made my first inventory. And one by one, I got these handed to me. And I guess my idea was, it's hard for me when I look back on those first 6 or 7 years of AA to kind of think of who I was. It was the same, kind of like being on the campus at Notre Dame. What was wrong with you that you had all these substantial defects of character and you weren't able to do something about it? Now, we were very much focused on the steps. I got into the steps. I took the steps to the best of my ability, and they didn't go away. And I had great examples, and I knew by the time I got into my 5th, 6th, and 7th year, they were eating my lunch. By my 7th year, I'm thinking about putting a gun in my mouth. I'm not thinking about drinking, but I am tired of being a loser. I am tired of starting well and not finishing. Here I am again. And I knew what the answer was. The answer was I had to find out what God had to do with Wednesday. I'm a Catholic. I mean, I go to grade school, high school, and university. I could write a paper about God, but I wasn't able to have an effective enough relationship with the God of my understanding to be able to deal with what was going on with my life. And I'm telling my sponsors 65% of what's going on, and I know here you do 100. I think that's really great. I'm only telling myself 65% of what's going on. Life is lived forward, but it's understood backwards. I did not see it when I was in it. I couldn't, seemingly, I could not change it. Well, of course I can't change it. I don't have the power to change it. And out of absolute desperation, early in my 8th year of sobriety, I went back through the steps for the 3rd time. Powerless and unmanageable. Anybody with a room temperature IQ could have figured that one out. 2nd step, came to believe that a power greater than myself. I guess I thought, you get me sober and I'll learn how to be a husband. You get me sober and I'll learn how to work. You get me sober and I'll quit gambling. And I found myself at 8 years of sobriety, going to 5 meetings a week, sponsoring people, starting to give talks, active in Alcoholics Anonymous, and my life is crumbling around me. And I waited. So I took the 3rd step on my knees with my sponsor in his office. We didn't do that much in those days, but I started to hear people from California start to do some of those things. So I thought, this time I'm going to dot the I's, cross the T's. I did my first 2 4-steps with priests, which is what our group did. But I started to hear people talk about doing it with their sponsors, so I did my inventory, went to my sponsor and said I want to do my 5th step. I said, be careful. I think I'm ready to do whatever the hell you recommend. I said, I feel like I'm dying of thirst laying next to a lake. I know what to do. If you came to my house with my problems and told me, I think I could give you reasonable AA advice about what to do. I just can't or won't do it. I am so bloody sick and tired of can't or won't do it that I could just spit. I did my fifth step. The best fourth step I've ever done, because there were no conditions. I did my fifth step when we were done. My sponsor said, you got a lot of problems around money, work, failure, and success. He said, I'm a mailman. I want you to go find a psychologist that works with business people. I want you to start having that conversation, and then I want you to bring the conversation back to me, and we will recapitulate that conversation with respect to the program and the steps. Oh, crap. I did not want outside help. That was not today. Lots of people get outside help. In 1967, not so much. It was about 2 pages of, counselors and psychiatrists. But I promised I would. I got a recommendation. I called the guy. He said, will you get your parents involved? I said, no. I said, they've been over involved. Will you get your wife involved? Ah, crap. When your wife's involved, there's just a lot of information that's in the room that is not necessary to the recovery process. And a lot of it's embarrassing. Yeah, I'll get my wife involved. We get your kids involved. I said, shit, they're little, Yes. So we start going twice a week to this counselor. And I'm explaining to him, that my company's going down, probably file bankruptcy. I'm losing everything I have. And he looks at me and he said, why are you so afraid of failure? And it was like he reached inside my solar plexus, right in the center of it. And I felt like he hit me. I mean, I actually had a reaction. I was about striking him. And some smart aleck thing, I just said, look, you're a doctor. You go broke. You just wait 6 months, get out in the hall, pound your sign on another door, and within 6 months you're making $100,000. I'm in the real estate investment business. I'm going to lose everything I have. Nod your head up and down if you understand that. And I said, I'm going to lose everything I have. And he looked at my wife, and he said, asked her, Linda, if Bob lost everything he had, would he lose you? And I said, no. If you can't lose, you can't play. I'm a salesman who doesn't make sales calls. I just lie about my activity. I mean, seriously, I just didn't make sales calls. I mean, it was just, I look back on this active, doing this, thinking I'm doing the steps and going, And 3 weeks later, I have a really crappy day, got to work late, left early, got in a backgammon game, won $500, missed the AA meeting, missed dinner. Got home, got in a fight with my wife, slapped one of the kids. Something you'd like to have videotaped and sent to the General Service Office to show what AA. I said, gee, it happened again. And I said, weren't you there? I said, yeah, but it's almost so automatic that it's in my subconscious. I don't even have to think about it. And all of a sudden I realized it was a bunch of hooey. I sounded like a guy I wanted to quit gambling. I wanted to gamble whenever the hell I wanted to gamble and not have problems because of gambling. I wanted my wife and children's love and affection without spending adequate time with them. I wanted money without work. Not a very good design. And then I realized that I had tried as hard as I knew how to try, ineffectively. But it wasn't like I wasn't in the game, and I had failed. And I don't know that I ever could have said those words to myself other than that night. And I'm reading the Bible. I'm desperate. I don't know what to do. I get down on my knees and I take the 6th and the 7th step of the program at a level that I had never taken it before. 6 steps said we're entirely ready to have God, not Bob or no defects of character. 7 steps said we humbly ask Him our shortcomings. I had spent 8 years trying to get rid of them. I do not have the power. I have the responsibility, but it happens through me, not by me. I'm the pipe, not the well. And I got down on my knees. I took the 6th and the 7th step. And my life changed like it was on a lazy Susan. I quit gambling that night. I've been trying to quit gambling for 5 years. I turned the checkbook over to my wife. My wife is an excellent money manager. Not all spouses are, my wife is. She put me on a $100 allowance. Every Friday she put $100. Now I'm up to 200. I kind of feel like I'm being kept. It's not a bad deal. I spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours trying to learn how to be a better parent. I think being a parent takes 125% of whatever you got. It's like installing a bowling alley in your head, and the instruction manual is skinny. And I started dating my wife every Friday night for the next 35 or 40 years. Best thing we ever did. We were talking about kids and bills, which is not how we fell in love with each other. We had to start going to Chicago and checking up for the weekend and start doing the things you would do and putting romance and having a night we got dressed up, we went out to dinner, we didn't just go to a movie. It was one of the more important things that we ever did. And my life started to change. All of a sudden, I'm in the real estate investment business, we're raising money, I have to go out and talk to people about making investments that I can't afford. Somewhere between 25 and 100 grand or 200 grand. And all of a sudden, I'm in a parking lot at General Mills going up to see a senior vice president to make a sales presentation. I don't want to go, but I'm reading the third step prayer. Now, you know what doesn't matter anymore? What I want. So I get out of the car, I go up, I talk to the guy, I think I'm going to sell him 20 grand, he buys 40 grand worth, the company makes 4 grand because I made that sale. On the way down on the elevator, I'm thinking, if a guy did that regularly. I mean, it's so sad. I almost can't. And so I became a salesperson effectively, and I became effective at analyzing the deals that we were doing. So all of a sudden, I also hired a woman to call me at 5:30 in the morning. This is silly. I mean, I'm getting up at 9, so I hire a woman to call me at 5:30. I'm going to 6 o'clock Mass 5 days a week. And after Mass, I go back to this side altar, and I say, God, give me your mind. I don't know what to do. Well, BS. I know what to do. I'm not very good at doing it. And I think he gave me his mind. Something happened to me. I've been smart all my life. I just haven't been effective. I don't know why I was so attracted to the easier, softer way. I was smart enough in high school that I didn't have to do much studying, and I was that way in civil engineering for a couple of years. But all of a sudden, I'm starting to be effective. And it's funny, when you start, all of a sudden, when that change came, all of a sudden I'm getting more requests for sponsorship. Before that I had some requests, but now all of a sudden, people are interacting with me differently. So I've been in AA 55 years. My wife has been an Al-Anon member 56 years. What a partnership. It has just been an extraordinary partnership. I have been a constant state of growth, source of growth for my wife. I don't think she'd have half the program she has if it wasn't for some of the responsibility. We have 3 sons, 50, I don't know, I know their names, 54, 50. Oh yeah, wait. 54, 52, and 43. Aha. At one time they were all in the program, so we went through a number of years with a lot of tears and a lot of difficulty that's going on. The middle boy is still very active in AA. The senior boy is 35 years but not active, and the other one's smoking a little dope, but he's doing okay. And they're fine men, which is really what you want. I mean, when you get down to it, good heart, bad heads. That's correctable. The opposite of that is not so correctable. And today we have, So for the next few years, I made enough money to burn a wet elephant. Luck had a lot to do with it. The time in the business cycle had something to do with it. And so, we buy the big house. I got 2 Mercedes, the big one and the little one. Now I'm going to meetings in expensive suits and ties and thinking that God had blessed me for what a wonderful member of it. How'd you like to be in my group? I mean, it was just, And then in the mid-'80s, they changed the Tax Act, and they took away the deductions for high earners for real estate investments unless they were in the business. And almost every bank in the country went broke, and if you were in real estate, it was the largest collapse in real estate value since the Great Depression. I lost $10 million. I lost it all. I don't know how you lose it all. I mean, how stupid do you have to be to lose it all? And, now when I tell that story, people would say, God, you went through that well. I was under my desk sucking my thumb in the fetal position. I did not do it well. I did it like we all do, in a real way. I mean, it never occurred to me I'd go broke. And our middle boy, cracked up a car, got arrested for drunken driving, and he went to treatment, and he's in a halfway house, and they have a meeting on Friday nights. We go to the meeting starts, I start crying. I cry through the whole, see that guy over there? He's got 25 years. How would you like to have what he has? I think he's got the clap. I don't know what the hell's wrong with him. Shit. I don't think God had the real estate collapse to teach me a lesson, but I think my lesson within the real estate collapse was to find out who I was with money and who I was without money. I turned the Mercedes in. I got an 8-year-old Buick. I'm on a $100 a month deal. I gave up my credit cards, and it was okay. It wasn't fun, but it was okay. I'm in meetings with 5 banks dealing with, $100 million worth of loans and negotiating my way out with my partner. My partner this January will have 60 years of sobriety. So between us, we have 115 years, and we've been partners 53 years. So that's something. And we have fought about everything other than money. We're very different men. And to explain how wonderful my life is. And in 2008, I got in trouble again. Explaining to your wife that you're in financial trouble for the second time is more difficult than the first time. Just report that. So we're not exempt from life. 3 weeks ago, our grandchild fell off the bed, and a 7-pound, 1-week-old grandchild, and had a brain bleed. And we're in tears for about 3 or 4 days, and everything seems to be just fine right now. We're not exempt from life. But you have given, I'm in love with my wife. I have a good relationship with the children. I was able to retire. My son is doing 4 times what I ever did, and he's running our company. I haven't reduced my activity in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the center of my life. My job is maintaining my spiritual condition. What you have given me and my wife and my children and my family is the ability to be in front of life on life's terms. I never had that. I was walking around with a grid about how it had to be, looking through my grid at what wasn't matching up and reacting to what wasn't matching up. And you have given me the opportunity to be able to be with whatever's in front of me. Do you know what a freedom that is? I never had that freedom. I had a thought, reaction. I was like a monkey on a string. And now I have a space. I have a thought, and I have an opportunity. I'm not a jukebox anymore. You can put a quarter in me and push B5, and I don't have to play B5 anymore. I had to play B5 most of my life and most of my early sobriety. It is, and I think it takes a while. I was so disappointed and felt like such a poor member of Alcoholics Anonymous in retrospect for having the problems I had for 7 or 8 years. But there were a lot of good things in those early years. Our activity in AA and our relationship with the people and the couples that we interacted with, we wouldn't give that up for $1 million. And about 7 or 8 years in, we met the people from Texas, and they tore the top off my cardboard box, and they brought me to a different level of understanding and a different level of participation and a different way of looking at the God of my understanding. And about every 5 or 10 years, I would meet someone, to do that, and our lives would be increased at a level that you would not believe. During my first 8 years, I tried and failed, I tried and failed, I tried and failed, but there comes a time where you either change or you build an addition onto your house to accommodate the problems. Chasers hang out with the chasers, gamblers hang out with the gamblers. Don't call me on my crap, I won't call you on yours. Deal? Bad deal. The deal that I have with the men and women that I'm in AA, Charlie, I don't know what Charlie Parker called spiritual, not agreement, but what? Permission, something like that. And we do not want to change. We talk like we want to change. The center of this disease is in the subconscious. Consciously, you want to change. I always wanted to have the benefit of change without changing. I wanted the things altered without changing. But I would, if we were having a conversation about my defects of character and what wasn't working in my life, I would tell you with every fiber of my body that I wanted to change. But if you looked at my actions, they don't match. And they don't match because the subconscious is saying, hey, do whatever the hell you want to do. Go 5 meetings a week, get a sponsor, do the deal, take your steps. We're not changing. We're not changing. What happened to me at 8 years of sobriety, the collapse of my ego, got to my subconscious. And something happened to me in a spiritual way that got through my mind barrier, through my ego barrier. My ego was suppressed enough that I was able to have the experience that we talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was life-altering. It wasn't perfect after that, but it was on a totally different scale than it had ever been. And I never believed step 6 and 7 in the way it's written, because I'm 5 or 6 or 7 years sober, and I still got a pretty good list of defects of character. I can't do squat about them. I've done 3/5 steps, or 4, by that time, maybe more. And either there's something wrong with AA or there's something deeply wrong with me. And after I had that surrender, once you've surrendered and been broken open, there's an opportunity for a transformation, not a change. And it's more like a sex change operation than it is an improvement. I mean, it is major. It is really extraordinary. The joke I tell about that is, the minister's on a park bench reading the newspaper, and a kid's on a bicycle up on top of the hill, and he comes down the hill, bicycle gets out of control, and he falls down, he cuts his pant leg and skins his knee and bends the wheel, and the kid stands up and says, "Son of a bitch." The minister says, "Son," I said, "don't talk like that." He said, "The next time you have something seriously wrong, stand up and say, 'Jesus, help me.'" 6 months later, same minister, same kid, same hill, down the hill, falls down, splits his pants, cuts his leg, bends the wheel, stands up and says, "Jesus, help me." And the wheel straightens out, and the pants come together, and his knee heals, and the minister says, "Son of a bitch." It is. And that's the experience. When we talk about the newer person being the most important person in the room, one of the reasons it is that we get to experience that transformation, not a change, that transformation. For those of us that have been around a long time, in this room, there's something about the people in this area that I think is just extraordinary. I've had the pleasure of being here a number of times, and I've been to your retreat a couple of times, I think. There's something in the collective consciousness of your recovery in this area that is just extraordinary. You're one of the best and easiest group of people to talk to. And, when you're a talker, there's pitching and catching. You need people catching in order to really have the dynamic go on. And there is pitching and catching in this room, and it's just extraordinary. I think of all the extraordinary gifts that we have, that our new lives have been given to us. When Mary gets a 5-year chip and we ask Mary to take a cake and we ask her how she did it, she gives a 3-minute talk, but she doesn't know how she did it. We don't know. It happened through us, not by us. We can all give a 5-minute talk about it. But it is beyond words. Words cannot hold it. It is of God. So many of us are struggling with, these are not easy times. The world's very contentious. The middle class is, getting jammed in a way that, probably never been jammed before. I mean, it's really hard. Two people working working hard and not getting very far and doing, there's a lot of suffering going on, not to mention Israel and Ukraine. The human body has 40 trillion cells. The brain has about 130 billion cells. There has never been, that anybody knows of since the Big Bang, anything like the human brain in its complexity and its capacity and what it can do. We sit and worry about all the chicken crap little things in our lives. And while we're doing that, our bodies are automatically bringing in food, processing it, eliminating it, regulating 6 or 7 different systems in our body. We have the most sophisticated, we are of God. It is, and we do a lot of talking about what our higher powers are. I am a Catholic. I still have many of those beliefs. The dogma is not as important to me, but the participation is important to me. But I'm starting to feel that the mind of God has been evolving through us since the beginning of time. And that the spirit that we talk about, it's the same spirit in each of us. It's the only spirit there is. It's the Spirit of God. Many of the wisest people in the world think there's only one mind, and we're sharing it. We're like eyeballs on a balloon looking out, and we are sharing it. How many times have you sat in an AA meeting and heard someone say something that's so profound, your mind just goes, oh yeah. It doesn't go, oh, I like that, I think I'll write it down. It just knows it has heard something that is very important. Who knows that? They've never heard it before. There is a knower in each of us that I think gets struck in Alcoholics Anonymous. We are a very intuitive group of people. We are not, you can't process what we do with the steps and that transformation in your mind. It is intuitive at minimum, of God, of course. So we start to have access for the first time in our lives to the mainframe. We've been walking around with a handheld calculator. And all of a sudden, they plug us into the mainframe. I really believe that we have been given access to the mind of our higher power. What could be more extraordinary? What could be better? What could be, for us to be able, and once you have that, you're not blown by the wind. You're not a dry leaf out on the sidewalk when the gust of wind comes up. You're centered. And you've got 2 choices, ego and intellect, God and the program. Ego and intellect, you got an 18-year-old running the world. God and the program, you're not alone. If I had to, I don't like being alone. The biggest sense of change in my life when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous is I'm not alone anymore. I'm with you, and I have a connection with God. And it is everywhere. If God is everywhere, it is everywhere, in everything. And when I'm connected, I am able to be. And I'm an old guy, and being becomes more important than doing. Most of my life, when us old guys talk, we do a lot of talking about higher power and that kind of stuff. And when you're 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years old and you're a hunter-gatherer and you're out there, you need to fill your container up. You need to rise up the ladder. When you get to be 50, 40, 50, and 60 years old, or 15 or 20 years of sobriety, a lot of the times you find out your ladder's up against the wrong wall. And you're not as interested in the container, you're more interested in the contents of the container. When you're 6 months sober, the universe delivers a container, shipping container to your front yard, and in it is the boat that you have to build to spend the journey of the rest of your life. And most of us never get that container open. Most of us want to borrow someone else's boat or strap a couple of logs together and get on with the damn thing. We really don't have an idea. How did I spend 8 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and most of my activity and most of my focus was external? Not totally, but it was surfacey. And when I had that alteration and that change, it became internal. The external became a hell of a lot less important. Doesn't mean that you still don't try to do well in business, but the external becomes significantly less important. We have the answer, not a partial answer, not abstinence. Didn't we all think abstinence was what we were joining when we came to Alcoholics Anonymous? And there's almost no talk about drinking. The book assumes that we stop drinking. Chamberlain in the new pair of glasses. So when Chamberlain gets sober, he's sober for a couple of months, I think, and he hasn't been to AA yet. And he hears about this group, and he's going to go to the meeting. He's walking down the street, and Chamberlain had a neurological problem when he first got sober, and he a lot of times would trip on a sidewalk and fall over. And he's in a suit and tie, and he's walking across the street to this church, and there's a greeter out at the door. And the greeter says, "Can I help you, sir?" And Chuck says, "If it was interest to you, I'm looking for Alcoholics Anonymous." He said the man's face lit up like a lamppost. He said, "Little did I know that I was entering a place that would teach me how to live," which is what we've been given. We've been forced to it, but we've been given that. We were talking in the car about being once born and second born, and the change and the differences with each of us if we've had that condition. We see life at a depth that someone who hasn't had that surrender experience has. We know it. We know the surrender experience. How do you teach someone how to surrender? It is of God. But if I ask the people in this room, how many people really believe that if you come in and help and someone takes you through the steps and you do just as good a job as you know how to do, not perfect, that person's going to have a spiritual awakening? I think we all believe that. That's extraordinary. You tell that in other situations. You could tell that in most churches, and they'd think you're talking out of your head. Where would you take someone to have a spiritual experience? Right here, wait a minute, I got a meeting on Wednesdays, that we can do that. What an extraordinary thing to have at our fingertips. What an extraordinary thing that Bill Wilson, when he's in Towns Hospital, has a vision in that mountaintop experience of his hand reaching out to another man, reaching out to another man, reaching out to another, infinitely to heaven. And he has a thought, sober less than a day, that's what his mission is. And he spent the rest of his life. I don't know that we could have had a better founder than Bill Wilson. Lived in 52 different places with Lois in the first 2 years of his sobriety. How many of us would do that? When he's in the lobby of the Mayflower Hotel, we always talk about him making the telephone call. He made 10 telephone calls. 10 telephone calls. The last one in his room, because it was a Cyberling family, the Goodyear owned Goodyear. and he didn't want to do it in the lobby, and he went up, and that was the famous call. He called Reverend Tunks. Tunks gives him 10 names. He calls all 10 names. The last name on the list is Henrietta Seiberling. And we are sitting in a room with 700 people. Our lives have been transformed. Our families have been healed. It is like that story of the minister and the little kid and the bike. I mean, we have just watched each other change, watched each other come together. And to be able, and you know the good news? It's already happened. It's happened if you got 1 month. It's happened if you got 3 months. I'm in a room with Chamberlain 50 years ago. And we used to go up to his room, and we'd be up there from like 10 o'clock at night to 1 o'clock in the morning, and he would, you know, these kids sitting at his feet listening to him hold court. And he looked at me, son, he said, you're not going anyplace. You already are everything you're ever going to be. He said, I can tell you're a little disappointed in that. I said, hell, I don't understand it. He said, what you're looking for, you're looking with. You already have, I don't know, my son Peter, what a pain in the ass. He always calls it the most inopportune moment. But we get caught up in life. We get caught up in finance. We get caught up in health. We get caught up in circumstances. But what if everything you would like to have happen in your life concerning yourself as a person has already happened? And all you're doing in your spiritual journey is getting what's out of the way, out of the way. That you have intuitively all the spiritual development that you'll ever need. And you are going to, I think that most of us have a sense that we're coming to who we have always been in a deeper way, and it's much more internal, it's much less easy to describe than the external. We're not trying to bring you to someone else. We're not trying to have you copy someone else. You're going home. The process of finding God is a process of removal, not addition. The mind says it's a process of addition. It's a process of information. It's a process of more data. It's a process of being smarter. It's not. It's a process of removal. You've already got what you're looking for. And the AA program, I think that's one of the magic things we do. We actually see something in the person walking through the front door for the first time that they haven't seen in themselves for a hell of a long time. I see it a little bit more in women, I'm not sure why, when they come in with those hollow eyes. Then you go to a different meeting and you come back in 3 or 4 months and there's someone home. I mean, there's almost not the same lady. It is, and she had that when she walked in the front door. But it was so occluded as she dragged her precious magnet through the junkyard of life and showed up here with a 6-foot ball of crap, thinking that that's who she was. And then she starts to go to meetings and she starts to get a sponsor, and they bring her over one day and someone brings a power washing machine and they spray the damn thing and get most of the exterior crap out, and then she starts to see some sort of form in the middle of that ball. She pulls it out and it's just very pretty statue. And it's explained to her that that's a lamp. And then about a month or two later, they give her a cord. Then they give her a light bulb. A year and a half later, she plugs it in the wall. A couple of weeks later, she turns it on. A couple of years later, she finds out it's a 3-way bulb. I mean, that is the walk. And it isn't rocket science. It is not, if we just open ourselves up to the process, and it'll be different for each of us. There are people that are meant to be extraordinarily active in Alcoholics Anonymous, and there are people that are meant to be mothers and fathers and coach Little League and go to a couple of meetings a week, and that's just A-OK. A lot of us that are doing 6 and 7 are jerks. You know, And we are not absent of defects of character in this process, even though we think we have more merit badges. This is about life. And thank you for mine.